All right, welcome to the first episode of Authentic Journeys. I'm going to be your host. My name is Fahad. And podcast, we're going to have conversations that explore the intersection of high performance and behavioral psychology. So today, my guest is my friend Amar. Amar is a creator slash entrepreneur, kind of in that area, and we're going to be having a pretty great conversation with him. So, Amar, why don't you kick things off by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about what you built?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, Fahad, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited. I know we always have great conversations, thoughtful, just very, very mindful conversations about, motivation, things of that sort. So thank you for having me on, first and foremost. And yeah, so my name's Amar Pandya. I am the owner of the Only Positivity kind of brand, if you will, really geared towards just, having about face in life, tackling challenges head on, and all in a lighthearted manner. And we can go into like some of the deeper thoughts there, but so far, it's a lot of it encompasses travel, fitness, photography, and things I read. And I'm just really happy to learn new perspectives, and that's kind of how we connected here today as well. So I'll pause there.
Awesome. Talk to me a bit about it, and how do you think that shaped you becoming a creator?
Yeah, absolutely. And without casting the widest net in the world here, I'll attempt to just keep the answer somewhat tight, and then feel free to ask me to elaborate as I go through. So, first, really great question. I think growing up, obviously in a South Asian household, there is obviously a path laid out for you. In my experience, right? It's there's a very narrow path one can take, right? It's like you're either an engineer, doctor, lawyer, right? That time old tale right there. And over time, I really enjoyed things that my parents got me into, like sports, like soccer. I really enjoyed playing musical instruments. I played the viola growing up. I was in chorus, and I was also very heavily involved in my religious community growing up. And as I got into certain things and the way that South Asian folks like to do things and go along these paths, I didn't find that there was a lot of room for creativity, And in my creative endeavors, I had always felt this sort of fulfillment, this sort of rewarding purpose from those types of endeavors. And I always had my own flair on things. I love to do things my way. And that could just me being stubborn, being a kid that's pushing against boundaries and things like that. But I always felt very confident in the person who I was. And that didn't always align to the tracks that have been laid out, right? So I think one thing that helped me really double down on my creative purpose was just to really invest more time into that. And the more I invest into it, the more I gain from it. So I'll pause there for a second, and just summing that all up is really just saying that I was refusing to be boxed in to something that was predestined for me. I really wanted to create my own journey, and whether I had solid footing on that or not, I just wanted to see how I would sink or swim in those situations.
So, what was it being boxed in that you didn't?
Yeah, yeah. So some of the things about I always felt like, and this might be very dramatic, right? And slightly inflammatory, if you will, but I always felt like if you box somebody in, it leads you to have conditional love towards somebody. Because as long as you live within the confinement of the walls that I set up for you, I love you so much. I love you to the moon and back. But if you step outside of that box, you have to start loving someone creatively. You have to start loving them in ways that you weren't loved, or ways that you might not understand how to love somebody, right? So I always love to see um, how folks will pivot and things in different situations, right? And when you box somebody in, you really don't give that person the ability to have a personality, right? You put them into this persona, and you mold them to your liking. And so being boxed in really, I think, thwarted a lot of my energy, and it forced me to try to be someone who I wasn't. And for me, when I try to be someone who I'm not, I there are some clear signs. Like I start to indulge more. I start to maybe eat, drink more. I start to sleep like more in a more volatile manner. And I was starting to just notice that I wasn't able to just like have peace and have a solid frequency in my life. So that was all causing me stress and anxiety, and those were just the downstream effects of me being boxed in.
And who, like when you say love, who specifically was that? Was that love for yourself? Was it love towards you?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, we're talking about the unconditional love part of it, right? And I'm thinking that so for me it was multiple fold, right? So I think it had initially started when I was a kid and immature and didn't have like the emotional intelligence to be, a little bit how do I put it, forward thinking about things. So what I'm trying to say here is that I would redirect that on the folks closest to me, like my parents, my siblings, and my aunts and uncles, right? I would I would start to realize that if I wasn't a certain way or a certain person, then maybe they just don't understand me. They just throw me in this like other box where they're just like, he is doing something else that's negative, right? And I didn't really agree with that because anytime you don't understand something, you should try to get a little closer to it and maybe 9 out of 10 times, maybe that's a high number, you might learn something from that, right? You might learn how different people think, and you might begin to say, hey, we're all out here just trying to figure out our lives, and we should just accept everyone for the walks of life they're going on, unless they're hurting somebody or doing something dangerous. So then after that, so the first wave was really you know just seeing what's around me and seeing that, hey, I might not be loved if I'm a certain way. And then secondarily, it was, to your point, am I going to be able to love myself, right? Can I love myself unconditionally? Can I love myself in moments where I feel like I'm not my best? Can I love myself in moments where I'm not motivated and validate myself and say, you know what, it's okay, right? Have these conversations with yourself and stop being so hard on yourself. Start being so hard on yourself about not meeting some other expectation that you're not setting for yourself. So then I started calibrating what my value set was, like what's important to me. And every day, if I can execute on those, then I would have had a good day. I would have lived a good life, right? So I'll stop there, and we can get into how we polish our pillars and stuff like that. But when it comes to love, right? I first feel like when you're younger, it's about who you're receiving love from. And as you get older, for me, it becomes about how to love yourself.
Yeah, and there's a of judge where like how you would probably judge without them under vice versa.
Yep.
Um, so for you, was there like a specific turning point where you really felt like you switch in being a creative? I imagine there's probably a long period of time where there's a bit of a struggle between do I go down this path or this like known path, or do I stay to the norm? There one maybe a defining life where you're what being boxed. I'm gonna go this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's when as you reflect, you realize more and more moments were inflection points, right? And I think we could definitely go into all of them. One that really comes to mind is, back in I think 2016, I was, I was seeing a girl, and she was aligned with every box, every check mark to be checked, in terms of the way I was raised, right? Same type of Indian, like goes to is very heavily involved in the religious community, come from a great family, things of that sort, right? And there was a point where we were starting to get deeper and deeper into things, right? And things were getting more and more serious. And I um, began to have a bit of a, how to put it, a paradigm shift where I was like, as I begin to live my life and start this new journey with my potential partner, I want to carve my own path. Let's stop listening to what everybody else is saying and let's figure out what each other want, right? And it turns out we didn't align, right? And ended up, the relationship ended up failing. And throughout this year of 2016, I started really trying to be honest with myself, right? Hey, there'd be so many times growing up where I would, tell my parents I didn't consume alcohol, I didn't drink, but I would go out and drink with my friends, and I was doing that for so long. And that is like a very, very polarizing way to live. and it's not good. It's very unhealthy from mental, physical, and every part of your being. So those are just like little microcosms of what I was doing. And so in 2016, I decided, hey, look, no more of that. Like, first things first, from here on out, be honest. Be as honest as you possibly can. But also, go ahead and rectify some wrongs, right? Go ahead and rectify some wrongs. So I started reaching out to people and started just talking to people that I felt like I had done wrong maybe in the past, right? People who might have been there for me, and I was like, hey man, I was just too selfish to really understand like that you were putting things aside for me, and you probably had your own struggles, and I didn't hear you out. So I started just reaching out to people and trying to just for no end result purpose, just to let them know, hey man, I'm sorry if I ever hurt you. If you'd like to turn a page with me, I'd absolutely love to do that. But if not, I completely understand. And some people took me up on that, and some people didn't. But what I realized was the folks that were putting me in this box didn't like that growth. They didn't like how honest I was being. They didn't like that I was going to stand on business, if you will, right? I was putting these pillars in place, and I wasn't going to shake them anymore. I wasn't going to compromise. And so when I started putting up boundaries, people started pushing up against those boundaries. And then so there was a turning point where I was trying to be honest about with folks about my current wife, and I was trying to let them know, hey, this girl is great. I love her to death. She's a rock. She's got all the values that I like, and I would love in an individual, but she just might not be cut from the same cloth that we are, right? And this and at this point I was willing to protect that. I was like, this is my future. I know what I want now. I know it's with her, and I know we're going to pursue a good life. And once I felt like there was some resistance to that, I became a person who wasn't going to allow any more boundaries to be broken. So that at this inflection point, I just packed up a bag, left my house, didn't have a place to stay, and ultimately made it work. Right. So I'll pause there, but that was an inflection point for me where I was just like, I cannot break brownies anymore. I'm going to go out on my own. I'll sink or swim, but I'll figure it out. But I'll be a man of purpose and character.
Nice. So I think we've been at the origin of here and made that shift. And so from there and started only positive, what has been going and what's been the pulling force along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great. So over time, I started, you continue to my value set continues to ebb and flow, but built on a good foundation. And the way I visualize it, the way I conceptualize it is I have vehicles in place that drive me or carry me to a good life, right? One of them is reading, right? One of them is fitness, one of them is photography, one of them is traveling. All of these things are vehicles that I use to just pursue a great life. And I knew right away that fitness was going to be a great thing for me. I've been fit, for majority of my life. I played sports growing up. I know the value of being fit. And I know it serves as a springboard for everything else in your life, right? And that's my opinion. And when I'm fit and I'm light and I'm excited, I feel engaged. I feel like everything else just has a trickle effect. Um, and when we go into things like photography, you know, I've always been one who I grew up loving to draw little things. I grew up loving to capture little memories. I grew up doing things like this, and those were just tiny little seeds. But over time, this is just from college. One thing that I really loved doing with my friends was I used to watch a lot of like travel vlog videos and like things that would pop up on Facebook, right? Where some beautiful girl is out there with her boyfriend in like Bora Bora, and they're just like, like out there in the water. And I always wanted that for my life. And so I was like, I want to pursue that. That makes me feel good. So I started pursuing travel with not only my wife, but everyone I love. Travel was always something good because I would learn. I would constantly learn. Reading, pretty self-explanatory, right? I hear so many perspectives. I travel in my mind every single day because I'm just reading a book. Right now I'm reading a book by a Chilean author named Roberto Bolaño, and he takes you through like the South American climate in like the like post World War II era, and he does it in a story that's fictional, but it's set in a real time period. And so I'm able to get there and just kind of I feel like I'm in the story and things of that sort. So I was always like paired with these feelings that felt like unworldly, that make me feel euphoric and happy and just make me feel like life is great. So I started chasing that feeling, and I chase it every day. and it's just one of the best things I've ever done. One of the best decisions I've ever made.
Oh, what about the flip? Have you ever
Sorry, one more time.
have you ever quit?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting part of the journey too. Um, I have almost quit many times, and I still continue to find that. I still come to, and I find that a lot of times I'll sit at home when there's like during the winter when I'm just sitting at home thinking too much. I don't have time to get outside and have free thought. I'll sit there and think like, is the stuff I'm doing like on Instagram and stuff like really cringe? Is it like, ugh, like what am I doing? Sometimes. And then I'll have to always have that. I'll always just open that conversation up. I'll just say, all right, you know what? When you're having these feelings, sit down and talk it out. And I don't know where those feelings come from. Maybe they come from the fact that I might not feel good enough to do this type of content. I might not feel like who wants to listen to me, right? I'll say those things out loud, and I always come back and say, you know what? I keep it lighthearted. Hey, you're just having fun. You're doing a good thing. You're putting out positive energy in the world. That should be good enough. But there's so many times, right, when you see things out there, especially you see on social media. Social media, I feel like is designed to make you feel a little less than at times, right? And there's people out there with like hundreds of thousands of followers, maybe doing some thirst trap stuff, or maybe they're doing something else, maybe doing something great and they're just catching a following. And maybe my version of being authentic will never hit the ground running and make, millions of dollars. And I have to be okay with that. And that's like why I put these pillars in place because they're outside of money. They're outside of financial means. I have a job and I have a different approach to that. But like with these things are all what make me a human being. They make me happy, and that's all they ever have to be because that's what they were when they meant something to me. So as it grows, we'll evaluate the growth, but we'd never lose the initial like boyish charm that I had about like diving in the first place.
Nice. And what about what sacrifice along the way kind of
Yeah.
go on?
I think there's a lot of different types. There's like social sacrifice, right? Obviously, there's financial sacrifice. I invest in equipment, all that type of stuff, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Um, I think everything in life is an opportunity cost, right? Right? You do one thing, you're missing out on another, and you have to be okay with that as well. As long as you have that conversation, you're honest with yourself about it. I think a lot of things I do on Instagram, I mean, you probably see like, I smoke weed, I consume cannabis, I do things like that. I also make videos with like some songs and stuff like that that might not be like, widely accepted and things like that. I say whatever I want to on my podcast because it's my space. When I speak freely. I'm not afraid to share my opinion and things like that. And I don't think anyone should. So a lot of that has probably cost me some friendships. It might have cost me some social capital, right? I'm not like a widely accepted dude in a lot of circles to my knowledge, right? But that's okay with me because I have a small pocket. I have friends like yourself. I have friends like the ones I was spending time with earlier this morning, who I know would be there for me in a heartbeat if I just called upon them. So for me, it's all about quality over quantity. But I think what happens is whenever you're honest, whenever you're truly honest with someone in a way that is not critiquing, like don't get me wrong, if I'm being honest about my opinions and my thoughts, and I like to, I don't know, I like to dive deeper into conversation, and people don't like that. Maybe they don't like the way like that. Maybe they think the only positivity thing is fake, right? Maybe they think I'm just like doing that type of hustle energy philosophy where everything is just great all the time. So what happens is I find that I don't often um, get the collaboration opportunities that I might like to. Maybe some people don't feel certain ways about me, but what ends up happening is that turns into like a filtering net, right? Like you made your way through that net, right? Because you took the opportunity to get to know me a little bit better, and we have a good time with each other. We're very close, but I think it's designed to be that way. So the sacrifice I don't necessarily put into a negative bucket. I put it into something that you have to sacrifice in order to be authentic because not everyone is going to resonate. And that is just the nature, I think, of being authentic and pursuing that journey.
So do you think it's a sacrifice is kind of nature, right? Like maybe they start with very sacrifice, but get closer and closer to your mission, or like what's pulling you. The sacrifice, it's still a cost, but does feel like a sacrifice. Kind of
Yeah,
once you're over some kind of hump.
100%. It's like over time, like what I would call it, like is like the activation energy of sacrificing just becomes like anything else. You're just like, I have factored that into this decision already. If I'm going, it's like I'm going to factor in the pros and the cons of this decision. The sacrifices are part of that, and we just have to roll forward with it. And if you don't, I think to your point, it's all about being aware and conscious of the sacrifices that you have to make. Some people they pursue. We'll use an example: entrepreneurial endeavors like us, and they might just sacrifice their friendships and their family and bonds unknowingly because they're pursuing this end, maybe financial goal. But maybe those things, those sacrifices that you didn't need to make were it all along, right? So it's good to always evaluate the like both sides of the coin when you're making decisions.
Yeah. And when it comes to or photography or you're doing, um, has there been a couple you felt like and kind of take away from it?
Like a couple days where I thought I failed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I'm one of those quick to fail type dudes. I almost enjoy it. Like I almost enjoy like being able to be course corrected at times. When I charge into something, and I do it loudly. I do it loudly, and I'll give you an example of what I thought might be like a fail in my photography journey, right? Um, so I'd shadowed a wedding with the company that took photos at our wedding, right? And this was back in 2022, I believe. And these wedding photographers have state of the art equipment, right? They are decked out. This is what they do all day, every day. And I offered to do it for free. I was like, you don't need to pay me. I'm just gonna come. Let me just shadow you guys, right? Um, and I went over there and I had like a little dinky camera. Like it was like it almost looked like a toy camera. And little did I know, I was just interested in taking photos, right? I just wanted to go and see if I could take some photos. And I get over there and they almost were like clowning me for having that camera, right? It was like such a small little thing. And in that moment, I was like, I felt like I had failed, right? I felt like, oh man, I'm not prepared for this. I'm never going to be prepared for this. Like these people are doing like what I thought was rocket science at the time, right? And I let myself wallow, right? I let myself feel the feelings of disappointment for a couple of days, weeks, if you will. And then I turned it on. I was like, you know what? They're human beings. They're not actually doing rocket science. So started watching YouTube videos, started understanding the equipment styles, and then I started forming my own style. And they didn't do anything like necessarily terribly mean to me, right? I mean, they definitely had like a little bit of their noses in the air about the situation, but it's okay. I don't take that stuff. I didn't take that from them personally. I just felt like, okay, now what do I have to do to obtain that level? Because I started putting it in facts and figures. I was like, okay, in order to get a client like this, I have to have that, and that skill. So in fact, I was like, let me put my pride aside and see the A, B, C that I need to make this happen. And again, quick to fail will get that mentality ASAP. If you spend time being upset, you're gonna miss that. And that's part of the journey as well.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like that judgment came back, right? Like, now that you're on there's still like other people
Yeah.
maybe you or other people are like be creating their own of like to be a photographer, this equipment, like, but where's the personality kind of uniqueness there?
Yeah.
Um, and but would you, depending on how you take that, it can actually be where it just kind of out for you. Like you said, if you want to do this, you put it in order.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know if I forget the name of this term, and it's spot on what you're saying. And I think there's like this Dunning-Kruger effect where, if you're not a photographer, right, you might think that what photographers do is relatively simple, right? Oh, they just like click a button behind the lens and it all comes out nicely, right? But once you get into the journey, that is when the real challenge happens because you're like, oh my gosh, like they're doing this, this, and this. But if you think about it, you're already farther along the journey than the person who I was just talking about, right? And so I have to always, that's where the only positivity comes in, right? It's like, what is the what is the reframe on this situation, right? I allow myself to feel toxic feelings, right? I'll be honest, right? I'll always be like, oh, dude, F that guy, man. Like, I'll allow myself to feel that. But like at the end of the day, I'll go, why did you have that adverse reaction? And then boom, there becomes almost a playbook of what you need to do if that's what you want to, right?
Exactly. Um, do you think there's something that is something that we don't see, or is some um,
If there's something about me,
yeah,
yeah, I think there's probably like a host of things that we could talk about. I think like one thing that I don't know, you might know about me because we've had extensive conversations, is that um I can appreciate sadness, I think sadness is a driver. I think sadness is good to have in life, like I feel I feel sad often, I feel existential often. And I I'm okay with that. But I talk about it a lot with my loved ones and the people I care about. And I think people don't necessarily always realize that. They might think, oh, this dude's just like happy all the time, when they see me. And just because I bring a version of myself to every interaction that I feel like is a version that is worth interacting with. But in all honesty, like I feel sad often. I feel alone often. I feel isolated sometimes. I feel different than people, and that is just kind of that is one thing that I think people don't understand maybe, but I don't need them to.
yeah. I was gonna lead into who cares? But
Same page. What was that?
do you feel like you know why sadness is there, or is it different reasons?
I do feel I have my thoughts on it, right? Maybe I don't know who really knows, but I have my thoughts on why I feel sad, and I think we all create our own narrative and have our own internal dialogue, and I try to be as honest with myself in those moments as possible as well. But I think that's part of the seeking process, right? I think that's like a term I would use to describe myself as like someone who seeks. So like I seek external and internal. So I seek inside all the time. In the moments where I drive in the car, where I'm going for a walk, I often speak out loud as if I'm talking to myself about things, as if there's two people there when it's really just me.
Interesting. Do you think there's any sadness, or is it more just thinking about, or do you feel like it's like an objective, or is it more of
Yeah, yeah. I think I want to say, not to always be difficult. I think it's more of a hybrid answer. I think it's a little bit of both. Is that I think there's a little bit of sadness at the foundation, and I think it's a personality trait of mine. I think it's like woven into who I am. But I also think it's a feeling. It's a fleeting feeling because there's times where obviously seasonal depression, right? Where I go back to it, like it's dark here for like 6 months of the year. It's cold, and I become a little bit sad during that time. But I don't create any sort of terrible narrative around that. I actually learn how to just deal with it through creative projects and things like that. I know if I have things to work on, photos to edit, videos to make, podcasts to record, then I have things to look forward to. So that quashes that. Now, some of the internal sadness, I don't know if I'm trying to remediate it, if I'm being honest. I don't know if I'm trying to get it out of my life because it makes the happy moments that much happier, right? So, like for example, you asked me to podcast, I was elated. I was like, Fahad wants me on his podcast. Like, oh my goodness, And so I'm honored by that, and it could just be like it could be something like transactional, right? I could just see it like, oh, this is just I'm just doing this just to do it. No, I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to do it. And I think if I wasn't like sad a little bit at the foundation, if
Hmm,
someone who inquires about me, I just get so happy by that. I just get so happy that someone's thinking about me. And so, like I said, going back to that statement is if I wasn't sad, I don't think I would be happy. If that makes sense.
I see. Yeah. So would you agree that there's a sadness that's helpful,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. I don't stray away from melancholy. I welcome it, and I think it's a great feeling to feel. It's one of those extreme feelings that we feel, and I love feeling happiness. I love feeling neutral. I love feeling sadness, and those are all phases that happen. And we can't, we're gonna feel sad at some point in our lives, and it's okay and I think the more ready you are for sadness, the more you'll overcome it.
Hmm. So on this journey so far of kind of running away, boxed in, and running toward what sounds like having the to express yourself, be original, do things your own way. And that's led you to photography, all the other stuff. What's the hardest thing you've had that you can think?
The hardest thing I've had to make?
The hardest decision.
Oh, the hardest decision. Yeah, the hardest decision I've had to make, I think, I'm all about honesty. I think the hardest decision that I had to make was distancing myself from my family. And it's not an easy decision to make, Like I think that um I believe that family has a good place in everybody's life. And I believe I see the worth through travel and talking to folks like yourself in family. I see the worth in it. And if I can be honest, I don't know if I saw the worth for me in my journey in family, right? Just speaking from my perspective, I didn't see it as something that was a springboard for a little one. I didn't see it as something that opened up doors.
Mm-hmm.
So I formed my own opinion on it. And going back to that story about boundaries is I always encourage everyone to set up boundaries, even with me, right? If I were to say something to you and you set up a boundary, I would immediately pick up on that and say, hey, this is an area where Fahad has set up a boundary and I must respect it, right? And I think family has an interesting role in that, whereas your kid will be one of the first people to break boundaries for you because you're their parent. And I think it's you have more onus, this is just my opinion, to be aware of your child's boundaries given your relationship with them. And for me, boundaries are my safety. Boundaries are things that provide me the happiness that you see in front of you today. And I found that the main people bringing down my boundaries or forcing me to compromise them were folks that were probably the closest to me. And I had to, there's all, I think, who was it? Don Miguel Ruiz gave us a couple of options that you can either deal with the situation, you can either remediate the situation, or you can remove yourself from the situation. And I tried the first two and they weren't the decisions. So I had one decision left, right? And so I evaluated it in that manner. So it became clear to me. And so that was a tough decision, but once you make it, you don't look back. And that's just kind of the creed I've like set up for myself is I'll evaluate it in in a true depth. I'll evaluate my decisions with very, very tenacious energy. But once I make the decision, it's locked up and it's behind me.
Nice. Do you feel like
What's that?
do you feel like
Sorry, you're just breaking up a little bit there.
that? Do you looking back, right decision?
Do I think it was the right decision? 150,000%. Like I believe it was the right decision. I How do I put it? You knew me briefly before the parting of the ways happened, but I feel as if I reversed aged after that situation. I feel young. I feel like I was born again in 2016. I feel optimistic. I feel like a good man. I feel like I have a vital role in folks' lives. I feel like people look up to me. And I just feel like every day I'm improving upon myself and I'm smiling more than I ever have. And although all these metrics are a little bit subjective, right? They're metrics that if I were to look at them, I could stand by them and I could feel happy. And I always come back to this as well. Um, you know how folks say live every day as if it's your last? That's a little extreme, if you will. But what I always like to do is have a conversation with myself at the end of the night. Hey, if it all was done today, right? Would you be able to sleep at night? And let's do that just for today, right? This morning I woke up. My wife and I had coffee together. We had some great morning time together. I practiced some photos, something I love to do for an upcoming shoot that I have. I went to play a round of golf with three of my best friends this morning as well. And I'm talking to another good friend of mine right now, right? After this, me and my wife are going to grill together and we're going to have dinner. And then we might go for a walk in the evening. If it all ended tonight, money, I would die happy. So I started really just like living by like principles that I could clearly define. So I don't regret the decision. And to your question, I in fact reaffirm it every single day, and I'm proud of myself that I made that decision.
Nice. Now, let's think about, well, seems like you're very, right, very content, um, kind of on this great, you've learned a lot. Um, do you have any negative things about contentment, about what you've gone through? What I'm trying to get, had you not faced with what you faced with, you probably wouldn't be here like this on today.
Right.
So just here's some reflection of like how the hard thing through your boundaries being judged by others, like about how you feel about having to go through these things.
Yes, yes. And that's a really great question. I always appreciate the way you bring energy to these conversations, Fahad. They're very thought provoking, pushing on my critical thinking skills here. Yeah, so in general, so when me and my wife got married, in our vows we spoke vows to each other, and in one of my vows I said, you know, um, we solemnly swear to tackle every obstacle in this life head on without fear, right? And that's like pretty basic of a statement, and I welcome every obstacle that comes into my life, right? I don't wish for them to come into my life, but I welcome them. And so, it's one of those things. This is, I don't know who said this, maybe Andrew Huberman said this. Somebody was like, when you have an obstacle in your life, I say, good, right? Good. Like,
Job.
yeah, yeah, exactly. There you go. So, my buddy's one of my best friend's father was diagnosed with cancer last year, and when he went into kind of the terminal stage, and they put him on hospice, my buddy told me, and we met up, and he was upset, and I didn't obviously mean this way, but I said, hey, good, like, this next few months are gonna be really tough. I'm gonna be with you lock and step. You stay strong for your family, and afterwards, after it's all said and done, we'll get some time away together, and we'll fucking cry, we'll fucking hash it all out. And so, to your question, right? Obviously, there's probably a threshold that I'll be like, oh my god, like when is it gonna stop, right? But I welcome every opportunity in my life in that frame, right? Challenges are framed, right? So it could be something like we're at the airport coming back from a beautiful trip, and we get like a 15-hour delay. And I go, you know what? Good. I got a deck of Uno cards in my bag. Like I have questions I can pull up on my phone that we can talk to each other about, and we'll make the most of this. And we always do. And so those are in fact some of the best memories you make. So if as long as it doesn't like kill me, and that I know that again that sounds very Goggins energy, but it will probably make me better. It'll probably make me a better individual, and I'll probably have a funny, interesting, cool story to talk about later. And that is like one of my goals in life. It's just to always have something cool to talk about. And so I'll try to turn everything into a cool moment that I could talk about with you or any of my other like loved ones.
Nice. Yeah, there's a really very similar, which was something like a smooth sea never made a good.
Yeah, exactly. Money.
But that doesn't mean you fuck around or with people's boats, mess with the wall. You don't like unpurposefully do that. But when it's there, it's like, you know what? When we come out of this, we're gonna be stronger.
It keeps it interesting, right? It just if all went well all the time, right? Knock on wood, hopefully it does. But if all was, you would just lose that like zest for like that energy you get, like that. And I love that's why I love to do like difficult workouts sometimes, not all the time, but it's like you need to. I feel like we us as human beings need to always be able to just be able to like get shit done sometimes, right? Just put the pedal to the floor and get it done and overcome something, whether it's boxing class that I take, a couple times a week, or it's something really I get laid off from my job and now I got to hustle up, right? All those things, my wife actually got laid off last year, and I actually heard I was because she her office is in our bedroom. So I was just walking by the bedroom and I heard the call happen. And as soon as I heard the HR person jump on the call, I was like, good, like we're here. I hustle to get the jobs that we have, and we've hustled together, and we're gonna do it again. So those types of things are just an opportunity to show you once again that I still got it. You know?
Hmm. Um, as you reflect, is there something or grown a certain way about that you feel like very unexpected?
Yeah, that's another good one. I really like that question. Um, Over time, something unexpected. Um, I there's a couple of different things. I never thought I would be as comfortable like being an articulate guy or like enjoying public speaking or enjoying conversation. I enjoy the dance of conversation, right? Obviously right now we're doing a little bit more of a Q&A, but that's one style of conversation we're having, right? But we've also done other types of conversations where we just sit down and let it roll, right? And a lot of times I'll be talking to maybe like someone behind the counter at a kiosk at the airport, and I'm listening to them, and I want to maybe like get something out of them. I want to like hear a story of how got to this job today, right? So I start to like pinpoint the right ways in conversation to get them there, or maybe I want to hear why someone wants to have kids because I don't know if I want to have kids. And so I'll start manipulating the conversation to get to the answer of why they want to have kids, right? And so that's something that I start finding about myself is like I like the art of communication. Another thing is that like I really don't have a problem looking stupid. I in fact I won't say I welcome it. I enjoy moments to laugh at myself. And I've realized the only reason I say that it has a novel component is as I get older, I see that other people around me aren't willing to do that, right? They're not even at work, right? I'll raise my hand to take a presentation. I'll raise my hand to try out a new tool, and I might even do it in a silly manner, but I've done that versus somebody else not doing that. And the more you finesse that muscle, the easier it becomes to learn new things because you're not afraid to learn it, right? So I think those two things I would say are some of the more novel things about myself is just my ability to be curious and laugh at myself at the same time, my want and desire to be articulate and discuss with folks.
Hmm. There's something a while ago. It was something along of like if you're learning and struggling, and then one day that isn't hey, you were capable of, right? All along, we've had every ingredient out of us
Yeah.
to understand whatever it is struggling with, but we'll understand. And things like a calmness, this whole feeling of putting your hand up like that made before.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. It's that was so well put. Like I don't even to add anything to it. There's just confidence to be had from raising your hand. And even before you commit to the act that you're about to, there's just this innate confidence come from saying like I'll do it, right? And it also has an impact in the room. I'm sure you can see that in all of your endeavors. Is the person who raises their hand, some people might not like that person. Oh, that dude's a gunner or whatever, right? But for me, I respect that person. I respect that person. I'm saying that's some of my people right there. I might go up after and talk to you, And there's folks like I've done it at the gym before. I like going to boxing. There's this dude who's like an older guy at the gym, doesn't doesn't really ever go to boxing classes, never has in his whole life. And I just was like, and we see each other every day, so we had not introduced ourselves. And I said, hey man, why don't you just come to boxing once and see if you like it, and now him and I go twice a week for a long time now. But on the flip side of that, he's more into yoga and Pilates. So I'm going to my first yoga class tomorrow. with him at 9:15 in the morning. And so we learn things from each other, and because we observe each other. And the reason I asked him about like yoga and stuff was because in our boxing classes we do like planks and stuff like that and like shoulder touches. And this dude is like rock solid, not swaying. He's got, and when we do V holds. And so I asked him, I'm like, dude, do you do something like yoga or Pilates? Because I struggle with like those types of holds. He's like, yeah, I go to yoga all the time. I was like, dude, I gotta go. So, like one of those things. And now I probably will end up being a yoga dude for a little bit, So that might be something that we talk about in the future.
Yeah. Creatively, who are your
What my inspirations?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a very, very good one. So I think, man, so this author I was telling you about right now, his name is Roberto Bolaño, and he doesn't really dabble in videography or things like that. But he is an author unlike any other I've ever read in my life. And one of the reasons he is that way is because the time that he takes in building up a scene is just out of this world. All anything from like the way you smirk to the creases in your brow to the oakiness of the table to the burning incense smell in the room. He puts you in the scene, and that to me is, I think, what I aspire to do with creativity is give you the feelings that I'm feeling or the feelings that I want you to feel, right? And you'll see that in little micro in a little vacuum in some things that I do, right? Like with some of my more cinematic diary things, I'll send them to somebody and they might not like it, and I'll be like, that's okay because that was the feeling I almost wanted to elicit. Like you had a little bit of a, ooh, this is uncomfortable, right? And maybe I want you to feel that way. Or even something as plain as photos. A lot of times I'll use my mother-in-law as a sounding board because she's very emotional. So if I send her a picture of like a baby shower and she like starts crying, I'll be like, I might have done a good job with those photos, right? Like it's just I those types of things. So he is one of them. Roberto Bolaño is a big one. I also am a big fan of this is there's this guy on Instagram. His name is like Keegan Jasper or something like that. And basically, what he does is he is a traveler. He's just a full-time traveler, but he does a lot of national parks type things. But he makes little cinematic diary vlog things, and he talks a lot about like he'll make a story like this. He's like, you know, take a moment to look around. Today you're 31 years old, and you have great friends, and you have this, and this. But before you know it, you'll be 41, and hangouts might turn into reunions, right? And people that you once knew intimately will become strangers, and that hot to cold feeling really resonates with me. And I'll be like, you made me feel just now, dude. You made me emote because I'm in this stage of life where we're tightening up our groups. I'm starting to have fewer and fewer touch points with the people I care about. People are going into their own journeys, but I'm happy for them. But there is that little bit of melancholy that comes with it, right? That little bit of loneliness that comes with it. And so that's another guy. And I think probably just like someone at the end of it, like someone inspires me is my wife. My wife, that sounds really, really cheesy, and I'll admit that, but she inspires me every day by just like being who she is, right? Just her ability to love people, openly, to love them to wholly, to bring like innocent energy to things, without, I don't know, this world has a way I feel like of sobering you, of making you a little bit, I don't know, narcissistic and sometimes criticistic and cynical. And I don't feel like any of that has really touched her. And I like that. I really enjoy that. And so I come back and think that's okay for myself to be like boyish, right? can I be playful? And I continue to try to do that. And it's because I feel like she's playful. And so if I can be playful too, and we have this life of play and excitement and childlike energy, that to me is very inspiring because I just feel like over time, people lose their ability to play and have that wonderment of what a child has. And it's there for us, man. Like, in fact, I think you can have more wonderment as an adult as you can sometimes as a child.
Yeah, on the second bit about um how some will bring you in scene and so forth. Do you think that uh, um a feeling of like
A feeling of,
connection?
yeah, yes, I do think it does. Um, and I've never actually thought about it that way. And I want to explore that. I want to explore that. Talk to me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think could it be that you, whether it's you or whether it's somebody, using that attention detail to really bring certain emotion, and maybe it's an you felt, and now you want someone else to feel it. Um, whether it's you or creator, do you think it comes from a deep place of wanting to connect with other people at that level?
That's a great way to phrase it, dude. I never thought about it like that, but maybe if I can gently tweak that, maybe I think it comes from a feeling of connection, but wanting to be understood. And like maybe that's the connection, right? I want to be understood. And I could say like for example, I made a video recently that was like a phone call, like a voicemail to my friend. So it wasn't a real voicemail. It was just me like, putting together a little short film. Basically, it was like, hey man, it was like, it's funny, isn't it? Like how we used to be so close and now, we've separated and, um, you know, we were there for each other in our low moments, but maybe that was it. Maybe that was like the substance of our friendship that we were just there for the lows and for the times where we felt like no one else had us. And now that we're both doing better, maybe we don't have or have created space for each other in that good part of our lives, right? And so that's how I feel, right? About this particular friend that I made this story about, right? That's how I feel. And maybe I just want someone to understand that feeling that hey, I feel sad about this, but I'm happy at the same time. I'm happy that we're in a good place. I'm happy that we're pursuing endeavors that we love, even though they're not joined. We're still I can still be happy, but I'll always be there for you. If you need anything, man, I'm here. And there's always that twinge of bittersweet there. And I think to your point, it comes from a place of wanting to be understood. I want these feelings to be understood, and I think sometimes if I'm making something, and I'm just exploring this right now, so it's hard to articulate, but if I'm creating something based on a feeling I don't have, maybe I'm testing the ability to have someone connect with me through a feeling. You know, maybe I'm just testing that out, and when I feel safe, I'll put out a real feeling and see if you connect with that. You know, and so that's cool. I think we're doing some
Yeah,
therapy here, dude.
yeah. It's interesting. So, do you feel like you are understood better now that you have gone down this kind of creative endeavor?
I feel like I am understood better by myself. I feel like I understand myself better. I feel like I understand the cues, the emotional and physical cues of what needs to happen, right? Like if I feel sad or I feel an emotion, maybe it's important that I jot it down. I journal often. Maybe it's important that I write. Maybe it's important that maybe if writing's too like apples to apples, maybe I need to color for a little bit, just like unplug and do that. Maybe I need to go for a walk. And so I think over time I've understood that the feelings that I have are okay to feel. And so
Mhm.
when I want to create, I feel okay to create because I'm creating through my feelings.
And do you feel like you're to know what to do to feel a Like if you want to feel content, if you feel happy, in generic terms, you kind of know what it takes.
Yeah, and at this point in my life, I feel like it's the best it could be, but it could be better, right? There's always you don't know what you don't know. And I think like to your point, Alyssa has mentioned this many times over the winter months as we lived together for many years now, is that hey, you go through these bouts in the winter, man. You need to like understand yourself better on those things, and and figure out ways to get out of those funks, right? And I agree with that 100% because I do need to. I should be able to, in my opinion, control myself and my emotions and things like that. So for example, in the wintertime, over time, I've really doubled down on reading books. I really doubled down on just just storyboarding things that I want to do and projects that I want to do. And having those projects gives me time to, you know, understand who I am. It gives me things to work on. It gives me an opportunity to look forward to something. It might be important that we go somewhere warm during the winter just for a quick getaway, right? And so again, it's one of those things where once you understand and you don't take action, it's on you. But if I don't understand, then it's all up in the air. But over time, it's like sharpening a knife, right? It's like I understand that, okay, dude, you are feeling a little bit anxious right now because why? You haven't gotten out for a walk today. Go out for a walk and then make a decision when you come back. Don't make decisions while you're anxious. So these types of things over time, or one of those funny ones, don't have serious conversations with your girl if you're hungry. And that's for real. That's a real one. So
Yeah, yeah, I got that a bit because like sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's cold, dark, tired, you're lost, you're upset, and you can't because it's cold and dark, or you can't get the room.
yep.
And so what do you? And the answer is nothing.
Yeah,
Just recognize that it's not the time to make decisions.
exactly. Exactly. There's time for inaction, right? Not everything is a solution moment. And that's a huge thing I think for me as a man in particular is that I'll speak for myself. Men try to provide solutions and not everything needs a solution. Not everything is so serious, bro, right? Not everything needs to be like a fully baked solution. Sometimes just ride it out and like come wake up tomorrow and I'm sure it'll be better. And
Yeah,
it's hard sometimes to flip that energy off.
cool. Where do you what you're building? Do you want to take this only positive?
Yeah, man. I think that's a good question. For only positivity, dude, one of the main things for me is just to continue building upon it, whatever that means. As you can see, I don't like to put any of those boxes around it. I like
Yeah,
to weave in and out of everything I like to do. Like, right, sometimes I put out travel stuff, sometimes I put out golf stuff, sometimes I put out just like, just random videos I'm thinking about making. And that's the main thing. And I think just over time, I'm looking to just form a space for my authentic self, right? Like I have my photography page that's really geared towards just photos. Like I don't do anything else but post photos on that. And that's fine. But for only positivity, I really want it to be a place where I can just be myself. That's why I'm not overly even like with Spotify and stuff like that, you can try to ramp up your monetization and YouTube and things like that. And there's definitely things I could learn. There's probably things I could align into to get that moving faster. But always coming back to the main reason why I started this is that I just want to, I want to be authentic. I want to be happy. I want to create, and this platform gives me that. Now, if we're talking more granular, let's say I do this for like another 15, 20 years, maybe, right? Well, however long. It'll be nice to parlay it into discussing things with more people, right? Like whether they be famous or not. But let's go like it'd be cool to maybe one day talk to somebody that's like that like a Joe Rogan. Like that might be cool one day to like get on his podcast or have him come on mine. Like I would absolutely love that. Or some of the folks that I really um rocked with growing up, like just like different rap artists and different R&B artists, different authors. It would be cool to just have the platform where I didn't have to convince them to like come on or like they're like, who is this guy? It'd be cool just to say, hey, I sat down with like Roberto Bolaño passed away, but hey, I sat down with Guy Ritchie. I sat down with Quentin Tarantino. It would be cool to say those things over time. Maybe one day, maybe not. But I've had enough really meaningful conversations in my life to feel happy about it, and I continue to hope to parlay only positivity into more of that.
It's funny he is somebody that the world the boxes and he just doesn't fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because we're not like that. Nobody is.
100%, man. And he's one of those guys, like I don't listen to him as much anymore, but back when I first like was out on my own, I would listen to a lot of his podcast, and I think he gave me the ability to express my emotions, you know? Like he talks about how he cries sometimes on his podcast, and I was like, "Oh, I thought you were just like like a meathead. I thought you were just like a gym guy, you know, but he is. He works out. He plays with his family and his daughters, and he also, you know, smokes weed. He also, you know, is into like all that what DMT stuff. He's very knowledgeable on so many different topics, and it just it just showed me that you don't have to fit into any sort of mold. You can be like a Swiss Army knife of all these different things that you put together. It doesn't have to be what anybody else says or wants you to do. And you know, he got fortunate where he planted so much that he got this huge, you know, Spotify contract. But that was only over the past like 5, 10 years, right? So to me, it's even more reassuring. Is like he spent many, many years probably just like living paycheck to paycheck, waiting for something to take off. But he really loved what he did. And to him, that was it. So I'm looking to get some of that in my life. And if I have never hit the famous part of the things, I think that this will serve as a good platform for me to just live a great life, man, and document it.
Awesome. That's kind of it for
My man,
anything on your mind
dude,
about me.
how is fatherhood, dude? That's what I want to know.
Um, I feel like I'm different. Like I feel like I genuinely feel like a different person
Yeah.
before. There's a different person. Um, just because I believe that like it completely changes
Yep.
for women, like and physically, emotionally, but even for men, holding your own kid, having someone to take care of, like perspective
Yeah.
is hard.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. If you can put it into words, that would be great to hear. Some of the differences
Uh,
between pre fatherhood Fahad and post.
yeah, like just like valuable things along things like because it's like a forcing present because there's nothing else to do and there's no other baby's crying thing baby needs a clothing change what the baby needs it really you to only do that stuff and before you know it you just feel present because you're not in different things you're just what's in front of you, which can be a bit too like as you're kind of being forced to be present it's kind of a blessing its own way um, and I grew up with a lot of the things that you're sharing
Hmm.
being boxed in. Professions are kind of already set for you to live up to all the expectations. You're always kind of you're being well, your parents for judging them,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
you do stuff.
Yeah.
But now being all I want for a kid is to be like fine, like to have a good streamlined
Yeah.
life, like a straight line. Um, but I do think with every generation you learn stuff, pass on to other folks, or even like talk about yourself, and you know, I think our generation understands the of wanting to like for your kid too prescriptive or too perfect. Of hey, if I know my kid goes into these fields, has this level of education, has this kind of income, my kid's going to be happy, right? But knowing that that can into without knowing into this person, like do this, do this, this, which is maybe um I think I realized through having our son talking to other people observing is like, your kid is gonna be the parenting. They will read the parenting and influenced by it. They're not gonna so if I'm really strict, my kid will end up a certain way as a reaction to
Right.
strictness. Or if I'm too loose, like the kid's gonna do it, and then that's gonna inform stuff he does. Personality. The Drew is really bullet, and I get to the like I do have some on raise them and how the importance that around him. It's just very clear to me that like um, decisions or spending time with him is just like a clear. Of course, it's gonna all. But other than that, I just want him to grow up, and part of that happiness, he's gonna have in there too to get stronger, right? Like I've talked to with my wife and other people, like fear of like going snowboarding, and he breaks it, and I'm like, no. My first time that thought, well, he just won't, like we'll do in the winter, and then thinking about it, like, but then he might think of his dad when he's 20, 30, is like, never let me snowboard.
Right.
So even like comes from like good, it ends up being.
Yeah, and these are all great points, and you make a lot of different points across a good spectrum of things. And I think just the fact that you guys are thinking about it is is enough in and of itself, right? It's like one of those things where ignorance is not bliss in this situation. It's you have to be aware of possibilities and outcomes and reactions to things. And it seems like, your decision making has really tightened up in this new stage of life because you realize more consciously that your actions or inactions are going to have a downstream effect on your child, which I think is a way that not that people maybe outside of parenthood don't think. It's hard to. And also watching your kid fail is going to be tough, right? Because you might have the solution, but how do people react? How do kids react when you tell them something versus allowing them to slightly fail, right? So like it's probably hard to nail down. Obviously, your child's still very young, but what moments do I allow him to fail, and what moments do I intervene? And that will always change as he grows. That'll never just be a one and done. So it's I think it's great that you guys start forming your muscles of thinking, like, and pivoting and being nimble now, like you guys are doing. Because if you don't do it now, it's only gonna get like more and more just off the charts as this dude continues to get his feet about him, and you know how little boys are, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole more on the process of it, like, it's very and it's not that unless there's you just gotta go through and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do, like as the baby's about to arrive, as the baby like how it arrives, does it is fine, the mother time is the fine, how much pain, what's going to happen, any condition or after, like stuff born with all of its
Yep.
no money, no amount of education, parents, no amount of
Yeah.
anything, and you kind of go through it. And I don't know, I think I have a lot of my own parents.
Yeah.
Because I grew up like a little bit of anger, you know, for my culture, upbringing, towards my family. But I remember when Ryan was born, I was like, you know what? There was a time where my had this feeling
Right.
where he was out to come, but I'll dad, like dad's got it all, or he
Right.
should out every the right decision. Same thing with my and when it and he was like I'm motivated, um, just criticize my head versus appreciating them. It's very hard. Everyone does the best. And I do have some problems of like people who don't. You know,
Yeah.
there's stories of dad not being his life, or I feel that is the love of a thing, like being a father, not aware of something birth or just responsible for. I don't like there's nothing take me away from my son and like the stories of the stuff. I'm just like in the past, maybe more of a neutral view
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff, but I do think it kind of forces you to have a view on some of these, because it's just really important to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I so many good notes there, and I think one of those good things that you were talking about was in terms of tail end, right? You have to have an opinion on something. You have to have it, and it's not only you. You and your wife have to align on it almost, if it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
affecting your child and your parenting strategies. And that to me is probably a whole nother, chapter or a whole new labyrinth of parenting and probably your relationship, right? You're probably taking that to a whole new level right now because not only are you just focused on, wifey, you're focusing on her and your son, and you have to align on things. And communication has to become enhanced a bit, right? Because I'm sure, your child is probably, having some tough times from time to time, right? And they could be physically screaming in the background, not sleeping. Something could be happening. So you have to focus. You have to get your problem solving together like really quick, right? And I also really appreciated the fact that, and thank you for sharing that you're feeling gratitude towards your parents, right? And I really appreciate the fact that it's affecting you that way because a lot of times we can take things for granted, and that's nothing against us, right? We only have that experience to go off of. But
Mm-hmm.
now that you're, like you said, in the same shoes that your father was when he brought you home from the hospital, you know the mindset he probably had, and that he was pushing through and being strong when he might have not had that much in the tank, right? And so that's just a great way, a great frame by which you can like show that reverence to your parents now.
Yeah, I think something that's with my wife is staying open minded.
Yeah.
Because we're parents, and no matter wrong, no matter how strong opinion I have, like it is really important to almost have an ear has a different opinion
Yep.
to make sure, because we could feel something that's really wrong, but we don't see it because
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
quickly like bad outcome. And so each person kind of okay with not knowing the end is good and important too. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, I don't want to keep you much longer than you have here, but this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm always happy to run this again with you at any time, man. It's always so refreshing to connect, and I just appreciate you making time for me, man. I know it's really busy for you right now, and this has just been a blessing, dude.
For sure, man. A ton of fun.
It's a lot of fun. I wish you all the success on this journey, dude. I know you're going to hit it. I know you're going to bring on so many great guests, and I look forward to listening in, sharing your content, and just being a huge supporter of what you do, man. I really do appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Yes, sir. Hey, you have a good one. Tell the family I said hello, and I look forward to potentially coming to see you guys one of these days.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that.
All right,
Do
my
it in person.
friend. Thank you again.
Yeah, see ya.
See ya.